Chapter 23, Setbacks. 2325, November 30, 2015, unknown location. The room was dark and almost devoid of furniture, save for an almost featureless desk and chair. The room might have been mistaken for a long-forgotten office or storage room were it not for the lack of dust combined with the well-dressed man who stepped into the room. Out of long-ingrained habit he sat in the seat after straightening his tie. His posture was ramrod straight as he pressed a seemingly random spot on the desk before tapping in front of him as though he had a keyboard. The wall across from the desk flickered as power fed into a monitor hidden in the darkness. Text began to scroll as the system powered up. System activation. Login/password required. 0. Redacted. User authenticated. Establishing secure connection. Secure connection established. 0 is now in attendance. Current attendance includes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All members in attendance. Good evening, gentlemen, the man known as Zero said to the empty room, his speech appearing as text on the monitor. The agenda for today is to discuss the ongoing efforts of Commander Bradford on Earth, as well as Major Fujikawa in the alien theater of operations. More lines of text appeared and were followed by a synthetic voice as the other members of the council spoke. 1. The alien attacks around Earth are continuing to decline in both frequency and scope. As of this moment, less than a dozen sightings or attacks were reported worldwide, which brings their activity levels down to where they were prior to Twilight Sparkle's arrival on Earth. 4. I'm afraid the reason might be due to the aliens' war efforts elsewhere. Our non-human allies are doing quite well considering their average level of technology is, at best, early 20th century. There are notable exceptions, however. 6. That may be an optimistic evaluation of the situation, considering the loss of Princess Cadance. The Equestrians won't take the loss of one of their rulers well. 10. Can someone explain to me how that happened? I know that she was one of the younger alicorns, but current threat assessments placed her equal to Luna and Celestia. Do we know how many forces were committed to her elimination? Hell, what kept her from just flying away or teleporting to safety? 4. That is not currently known. Strike teams were deployed within 15 minutes to her last known location. Investigation of the scene and interviews with civilians fleeing the area indicated that Princess Cadance entered the battle, and the aliens dropped everything they were doing to get at her. The trail of bodies leads into the mountains and a cave complex. It is believed that she intended to use the caves to bottleneck the attackers, and she partially collapsed the cavern in an attempt to eliminate the possibility of her being captured. 1. There was some mention of a local working alongside the aliens, of an indigenous race that we've yet to encounter. Could one of the nations on their world have already fallen to the aliens? 6. The Equestrians provided some information on the most likely suspect. His name is Tyrek, and the race he belongs to bears some similarity to the centaurs of our mythology. He was previously thought incarcerated in the deepest hole the Equestrians could throw him into, though the specifics are a bit vague. What they were certain of was Tyrek's ability to steal the magical capacities of other creatures. 9. Steal abilities? Do we have a more detailed explanation? 2. I've been glossing over some of the reports of the survivors of the battle. Tyrek's ability is extremely interesting. The targets of his attacks often show symptoms similar to the Equestrians that fell prey to some of the toys that Exalt are deploying. 16. How in God's name did Exalt make their way to Equestria, anyway? 2. Let me finish. Equestrians that were attacked by Tyrek have lost all capacity for magical ability, and also appear to be physically weakened as well. Where this gets interesting is that Tyrek doesn't block the abilities like the jammer grenades or rule breaker. He actively adds their magical capacities and abilities to his own stockpile. 3. Is that so? I suspect that I'm not the only one who can see the possibilities in such a power. 14. I think this Tyrek needs to enjoy the hospitality of the good Dr. Valen. He has so much to teach us, I think. Do the equestrians have any theories for how his power works? 2. There's nothing listed in the notes, but I have a theory. Rule breakers and jammers operate under a magical formula that automatically interrupts the flow of energy from the field to the caster and returns it to the source. I think that Tyrek's ability might start in a similar fashion, but instead of releasing that energy, it's redirected to him. 4. Such speculation is pointless at this time, but I think that we can all agree that the live capture of this Tyrek or another of his species with a similar ability is an objective that should be pursued. Greater than 4 has called for a vote, priority orders for live capture of Tyrek. Yes votes, 12 total, no votes, 2 abstain. Proposal accepted. 11. I don't think the equestrians are just going to let us take Tyrek into custody that easily. He is technically a citizen of their world, after all. And Captain Shining Armor probably wants his head on a pike. 15. On the subject of the good captain, I find it hard to believe he wouldn't take appropriate action to defend the princess. Weren't there security measures in place to ensure her safety? 4. I would think so, but the report isn't complete yet. 7. Until the report is complete, further speculation on this subject isn't necessary. 12. Agreed. As tragic as the circumstances are, we have more pressing issues. Do we know how Exalt managed to make it to the other world? 9. Unknown at this time, but there is a high probability that the Exalt infiltrator that sabotaged the Alpha site is responsible. A significant amount of data on current projects was accessed while he was there. The jammer grenades and the towers they've deployed in the smaller hamlets are likely a weaponized offshoot of the rule breakers. While the resources necessary would be staggering, it's possible they created their own kaleidoscope as well. 14. Dr. Shen has been able to inspect captured equipment, and he is confident that we can reproduce both the handheld devices and the installations if necessary. 5. It took several pages to come to that conclusion, but not before going over every single factor that might make them infeasible. The good doctor has expressed squeamishness about XCOM's methods in the past, and I think he is taking issue with the development of something we can use against the equestrians just as much as the aliens. 4. Is he wrong in thinking that way? These people went out of their way to help us when they could have let us fend for ourselves. It seems poor form to actively design and produce weapons to use against them. 11. I would rather prepare for the eventuality and not need it than the other way around. From what Major Fujikawa reported, Princess Luna was extremely displeased when she became aware of Exalt's existence. We need countermeasures in place should the worst come to pass. 9. I'm inclined to agree with you there. 1. Indeed, though news of this decision should not be shared with Major Fujikawa or any of the personnel that are away from Earth. There has been a disturbing trend of information leakage to the locals that I don't want to contribute to. 5. Speaking of the locals, is there a threat index placement for the two new major players, Shirogane and Chrysalis? I don't know about any of you, but I'm extremely suspicious of anyone who rides in to save the day while at the same time using blackmail to force their way into the coalition. 10. Chrysalis's threat assessment varies depending upon a number of factors, but with the appropriate countermeasures to detect the changelings, she won't be as much of a concern for us. As for Shirogane, theorists speculate that with a steady supply of alien trinkets, she will remain loyal to the cause. 1. You'll have to forgive my skepticism, but if the dragon matriarch is only loyal because of the trash we give her, what's keeping her from switching sides to the aliens should they make a better offer? 4. Spike. Twilight Sparkle's dragonling companion was hatched in the equestrian capital without any dragons being present, and my few cursory searches found no clues as to the origin of the egg. I suspect there's a familial relation there, and that's the real reason for her participation in this alliance. Even as a collector of rare things, I can't fathom any of the twisted wrecks being presentable in any way for her hoard. 5. I'll play the devil's advocate on that point. It could be less for display of wealth purposes than as a trophy collection. From what I hear, Commander Bradford had to put his foot down when he found out XCOM operators had a bit of a black market going for trophies taken from the corpses of aliens. 15. Something has been bothering me since I first started reading the reports for this month, and I'm surprised no one has mentioned it yet. Chrysalis has been providing a real-time monitoring system for alien attacks on population centers, and Chirogana's kind has done a stellar job of interdicting UFOs. 7. I'm assuming you have a point. 15. The Equestrians and XCOM personnel became aware of the attack on Cadance due to her letter, and only then deployed forces to assist. Where was the Changeling network to warn them? 4. That is a good question. 13. Doesn't Chrysalis have a history with Cadance? Could the lack of response be a case of convenient negligence? Come to think of it, there hasn't been any early warning response to the attacks in the Crystal Empire. 14. As much as I hate to admit it, I think our dealings with the Equestrians might have dissuaded us from entertaining the possibility that not all of their people are as honest and straightforward as they appear. 2. I can second that. 1. If Chrysalis was deliberately negligent, then I suspect it won't be long before the Equestrians pursue justice for themselves. 10. That's a very likely possibility, and we can't interfere if we want to stay on good terms. We're currently on shaky ground due to some of the things the Equestrians have learned already. Of course, that doesn't preclude us from making arrangements with the Changelings outside of normal channels. We'll just have to be quiet about it. 11. On the note of other arrangements, Dr. Shen's attempts to approach both the Minotaurs and Griffins to discuss their respective technologies were unfortunately rebuffed. Some interesting insights were learned about the cannons that were used in the defense of the capital, however. 8. I've seen the pictures, and they look like rip-off Flak 88s from over half a century ago. What could we possibly learn from those? 11. Dr. Shen reported that the weapons themselves use some sort of smart munitions system that is tied to the gunner. The accuracy and power of the shot is apparently partially tied to the killing intent of the creature that fires the weapon. It's not something that can be automated. The shooter must be conscious of the harm he is going to cause, and have the will to inflict it on the target. 5. I think that those guns are related to the toy box that was mentioned in some of the other reports. Current speculation on the subject is that it was a weapon of mass destruction that was deemed too powerful to use, or some form of autonomous machine. These theories seem to be supported by Shen's findings regarding the Minotaur cannons, and that might be as far as we can get on the subject. Captain Harris had Twilight Sparkle attempt to research the subject and found precious little, and the Minotaurs are universally silent on the subject. 12. While an interesting bit of trivia, speculation about the toy box is pointless now. What weapons did the Griffins have that could possibly be of use to us? Last I heard, they were still using bladed weapons and some form of heavy crossbow. 11. The weapons themselves don't appear to be all that special, but after reviewing some of the high-definition footage taken by the mechs, I discovered something interesting. Pull up file Beowulf 0534988136 and pause at the 12-minute, 17-second mark, then advance at 1 frame per second. 4. What are we looking? Oh, I think I see it. How do they do that? 5. I'm seeing the Myrmidon skewering a mutant. I'm not certain how this is relevant to the discussion. 4. Image magnification of the spear blade shows the mutant's armor parting before the blade comes into contact with it, like a hunk of snow melts when you put a rod of superheated metal into it. And no, as far as we can tell, the bits of these weapons that glow are not giving off any detectable heat. 7. The armor cameras for the strike teams also caught those crossbows taking out cyber discs of all things, so I assume that whatever effect is being used is carrying over to their bolt weapons too. 11. Indeed. It's a shame that they're almost religiously protective of the weapons. From what I understand, Lieutenant Morikawa has some rapport established with High Talon Alvar while using Beowulf. I imagine it wouldn't be too difficult to rig the mech frame with some scanning equipment to try and unravel this mystery. 9. While I can certainly appreciate the scientific need to unravel the mechanics of these weapons, I still fail to see any practical applications for it. 1. The kinetic strike modules that the mech units field are excellent for disabling hard and static targets. Aside from Lieutenant Romanov, we have no way of reproducing anything similar for regular infantry without a prohibitively large power supply. While the Griffin weapons aren't nearly as spectacular in their results as the KS modules, they are still able to negate enemy armor seemingly without any sort of power supply, and all while using weaponry that went out of style over 500 years ago. 3. It might not be as revolutionary as some of the other recent developments we have had, but I suppose I can see the benefits of it. KS impacts tend to leave very little in the way of usable salvage, and something like this could reduce the chances for collateral damage. 14. I agree that some time should be devoted to researching the subject, but there are some more pressing tasks that require our time. Researchers at the Omega site are reporting some progress on Project Media. 9. There's no mention of Project Media in the monthly reports. What is that? 13. It's being kept separate from the usual XCOM information systems, as it is what we hope will be a replacement and countermeasure to Commander Bradford, should he need to be removed. What progress was made? 14. As most of you are aware, regular medical scans are made of any gifted personnel so their particular brain structures can be catalogued and hopefully reproduced artificially. The kinetic strike modules we mentioned earlier are an excellent example of this in practice. Using the base telekinesis formulae from Twilight and combining it with scans of Lieutenant Romalov's brain, we were able to create a device that is capable of delivering 3,000 newtons of force with the lightest of touches. 14. The researchers at the Omega site have had access to the scans of Commander Bradford for just under a month, and they are confident they can create an interface that can send data from one point in time to a time in the past. Best estimates are that they will have a receiver constructed by the beginning of next year. 10. Excellent. If this works, then we'll finally have a countermeasure against him. 7. It is to Commander Bradford's credit that he commands the confidence of XCOM's operational personnel as well as having the backing of this council, but with the alien invasion apparently winding down, I would be much more comfortable if he were to retire. Enough, the man known as Zero interrupted, and the council fell silent. Commander Bradford has performed outstandingly in the face of a global threat we have never seen before, and he has done nothing to warrant his removal. Development and testing of Project Media will continue as a means of supplementing the abilities that Commander Bradford already provides to the XCOM project. Until there is substantial proof that he is no longer capable in his current position or committed to the preservation of humanity, then this subject will not be discussed again. A somewhat reluctant chorus of agreements came from the council before the members disconnected one by one. When the last of the council members left, the man known as Zero tapped another place on his desk before clasping his hands before him. "Good evening, Commander."